it's acting like a little boy. It's not the way a man should show up. A little boy is going to run away and be pissed off and wait for that attention or whatever. But that's not how you as a man in your relationship can show up. As a man, you've got to be the leader and lead with authenticity, with love, with a conscious awareness of what is happening and what it is you want to create there.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Powerful Man Show. I am your host, Doug Holt, with my co-host, Arthur Magulianiti.
Hey.
Did I get that one right?
You got that right. Hey, guys. Hey, Doug.
So, guys, if you haven't met Arthur yet and gone back through the previous episodes, I do recommend you pause it. Arthur is an amazing advisor, mentor, and coach within The Powerful Man. And he's moved up. He's also gone through the activation method as well as the brotherhood. And he runs the show here pretty much. So, Arthur, today I want to talk about relationships. You and I are both married men, and we've done a lot of work and a lot of studying around the area of relationships. So give me a relationship story in your life.
Oh, wow.
What happens when we don't have a script or a plan?
Okay, well, I've been married like 16 years now. And, I'm happy to say that, things are always getting better, which hasn't always been the case. We came together, obviously we love each other. But even in the best relationships, you're going to go through some hellish stuff. And I think this is what a lot of guys don't realize. It's just like, there's always going to be stuff that you got to work on within relationships. And I suppose one of the stories that I'll go straight into it here. Like one of the stories one of the lessons that I learned over the years was that, whenever we have those run-ins with each other, the fights, the arguments or whatever that develop into a fight, I always used to give my wife Penelope the silent treatment. I would ignore her for as long as I could, and usually went on for about 2-3 days, thinking that I was punishing her. Of course, I wasn't doing any of that. I was just being a complete fool and moron, and achieving nothing except like just taking too long to resolve the issue. And that always came as part of it was because I always thought that I had to win a fight. It always came from like, as men, if we're in a fight, we got to win it, don't we? And in a relationship, we sit there and we think, oh, we're in a fight. Shit, I got to win it. And yet you can never win a fight in a relationship, because even if you do win, do you ever really win? No chance. And this is a difference, I think, between men and women. Men always have this one-upmanship. We got to be one up from the guy. In competitive and business and this and that, and we bring that to a relationship. But I think when a woman is looking to connect, well, that is what she's doing. In a disagreement, an argument, or whatever, she's looking to connect. And then we come to the whole argument or disagreement, and we're looking to win. We at cross purposes. So one of the things that I picked up over the years was, I'm not trying to win in an argument, right? I'm trying to connect. I'm trying to make peace. The outcome is I want a loving relationship. And so I'm not out there to fight to the death or whatever it is. It's like, okay, we disagree. Let's talk it out. And that's been one of the biggest shifts in my relationship, because now we can go from disagreement to loving within minutes, if not hours. Yeah. But definitely not 3 days of me being on, sulking in the corner. And that's made things so much easier now that to be honest, we are having a lot less disagreements, a lot more open and honest communication as a result of just showing up from wanting a peaceful, loving, kind connection with each other. And that makes a huge difference.
Well, Arthur, I'm shocked. I'm sure all the men here listening to this can agree with me that our relationships are all perfect. And I think, what you said resonates with every married man anywhere in the world, regardless of language, culture. I don't care if you're in the bush somewhere, they're having the same conversation, which is exactly funny. Something that came to me when I was listening to you, one is I completely resonate with everything you said and can relate all too well, as all the men listening to this can, whether you're married or just in a serious relationship. Although there does seem to be a little switch when you get married, right? It changes just a little bit. You don't think it's going to, no one does, but it does. And as the years go on. But you said a lot of things. One thing I want to bring up right away, and we can dissect that as we go through this episode, is you talked about how you would punish your wife. I'll use my language. You would punish her by ignoring her or giving distance, right? And isn't what really is happening there, guys? You get this? Is we push away because we're hurt, right? You push away, and really what we were wanting is for them to come running and pull you back in, right? I push you away, I strong arm you, and what I really am, because I'm hurting inside, I want you to come basically apologize to me, validate my feelings of being hurt and my feelings of being distant. And let's face it, you are right? We all know we're always right, but and to validate and to really show you that you're loved and cared for and respected. Respect's a big one for us guys, right? We want to know that we're always respected and also loved.
It's but it's counterproductive. It is, and as you were saying that, what came to me was it's acting like a little boy. It's not the way a man should show up. A little boy is going to run away and be pissed off and wait for that attention or whatever. But that's not how you as a man in your relationship can show up. It's just not the done thing. If you're going to as a man, you've got to be the leader and lead with authenticity, with love, with a conscious awareness of what is happening and what it is you want to create there. And if there's a disagreement, you really have to take the lead in resolving that so that you all both do come back to peace and love. And I think the difference is knowing, when am I showing up like a boy and when am I showing up as a man? And becoming aware of that, because it's not always easy when you're triggered in a disagreement, when you are hurt. Sometimes the worst does come out, your worst behaviors comes out, but ultimately that's not who you are deep down. And this is a lot of the work we do and we cover in the activation group, is figuring out who you really are as opposed to who you've showed up in the past.
Yeah, there's a couple things I want to talk about. One thing, Arthur, is and I'm just going to say it, guys. You guys know I'm a direct, is most men don't know who they are, right? So when we say that's not who you are, you need to be a man, not a boy. Most men don't know who they are, and they don't have a definition of what a man means, right? Not the TV definition, right? But the definition of what a real modern day man, I'll even say a powerful man, is to them. And they haven't clearly defined that themselves. So guys, that's a whole nother topic, but it's exactly what we go through in the activation method as well as the alpha reset. But the second thing that you touch on, and I'll just go from my experience, and Arthur, the guys can't see you, so I see you shaking your head over there, agreeing with me. But the other thing that tends to happen, at least it happened for me, right? So I would do this with my wife, same scenario, get an argument, boom, I'll show you, I'll push away, I'll become cold and distant, ha ha ha, I won, right? That whole idea. But then what happens is the woman, right, she withdraws within herself because it's not safe, right? And these are the terms, we're using terms, guys. Arthur and I have been through a lot we coach this on a very high level, so I'll do my best to break them down. But she's not going to feel safe. She goes within herself, in her shell, so to speak, and now she withdraws and pushes away. So now the distance between you grows. It's grown. Now you got a Grand Canyon size distance between you, which results in sleeping inches away from each other, but being miles apart emotionally. And that tends to keep growing over time, right? That distance, it's like two things in space slowly moving apart, and they start to quickly move apart. Now, is that, well, first of all, I can see you shaking your head, but is that your experience as well, Arthur?
Yeah, it can become cumulative, because some of those fights can get, depending who you are and your history and whatever, those fights can cut quite deep. And you don't really heal those too quickly. And you have too many of those, that space is going to become a lot quicker. It's going to be a cumulative effect. Not that you can't resolve it, but if you're not actively working towards it and you're arguing more and more, that is going to have a cumulative effect that is going to hurt both people.
Yeah. And so I've actually mapped this out for clients before. So mainly because I've been through it so many times. But it starts off with you get an argument. One person says something, the other person retaliates. You're both hurt, and you've created stories around that hurt. And since you haven't come back together, you create another story around that, right? And it becomes these spirals that keep going. And it's one trigger after another trigger after another trigger after another trigger that occur. And now you're on 3 or 4 different tangents that are upsetting you, right? Things that weren't upsetting you beforehand have gotten triggers, which then sparks the story for some of us, I'm not good enough, right? She doesn't love me, or he doesn't love me, depending, right? And then you have a whole nother pattern around I'm not good enough, which feeds this, right? Which feeds this other pattern of what's going on. And these can be simple arguments that start off as simple, right? But there's a baseline going through that. And don't worry, guys, by the time that we get done with this episode, breaking it down, we'll show you some ways to get out of this pretty quickly. But I want to break down the elements of this because, guys, if you're in it right now, you're going, holy crap, how do they know? If you're not in it, I wanted to streamline because these things happen so deeply. And one of the things, Arthur, that I see with the guys is that argument tends not to be about what really happened, right? So an example that I've had with my wife one time is we were driving in the car, going to go hiking in the mountains, something we love to do, both very adventurous. And she was telling me a story about one of her girlfriends, and and she was saying something, and what she said was, she said, "Oh, her husband got him, this thing for a push. It was a push gift, right?" So the idea is, I guess, you have a child and your husband buys you a very expensive gift. I started laughing. I said, isn't it amazing how they have all these made up holidays these days on all these things? And before I could finish, right, that started a whole trigger of fights, and elements. And what happened was, and I'll tell you how we got out of that within seconds, right? But, in the past, that would have resulted in weeks of us not being connected emotionally, maybe some sexually, but not really the deep sex that we all love, right? And what happened was she heard I didn't value women giving childbirth, right? That's what she heard. And I heard a little element of I'm not good enough husband. And that wasn't the story. I was going to talk about Valentine's Day, power showers, which is supposedly where a guy, has a kid and the guys get together and give him power tools and all of the, like a baby shower, like all these things that I've been hearing about within that week, right? Which could have been just a quick laugh of the conversation, spiraled out of control quickly. And was destined to make this hiking experience, which is always fun, right? Hiking when you're mad at somebody, absolute disaster. So that's how things can go. Their triggers from our past can come up, and past stories where both of us had a trigger of earlier on when we weren't being validated for something else that had nothing to do with our relationship at all.
Yeah. And I think it could also have, been built on previous disagreements that you hadn't dealt with, right? Or little resentments that had built up. And so, in the weeks before or whatever, that just got triggered there at the same time. And this is why it's so important to develop a clear communication with your partner, and not allowing for these buildup of resentments, of judgments, of criticisms, without being able to have a healthy conduit to let it all out. I think another thing that I wanted to share was one of the other big things that I had in that I overcame within my relationship with Penelope was like I found myself having a mistrust for her intention. All right, it was like she's out to do something, and she's out to get me somewhere, she's going to manipulate me, or no, sometimes. And I'm not saying there aren't women out there that manipulate, right? Definitely there are, but not most of them, I'd like to say. And I got to a stage where I made a decision that I said, okay, if I love her and I'm confident she loves me, then I'm going to trust her. And I'm going to trust that if she's got a disagreement, that she's not out to manipulate me, but she's got something that she wants to discuss so that we can resolve. Now suddenly every disagreement wasn't like a make or break of the relationship. Oh, she's out to get me, I'm either going to walk away or whatever. Now it was just, we do have something that needs to be discussed here for the better of our relationship, because I came from a position of, I know she loves me, I know she wants to make this better for our relationship. That's why we're sitting here. It was a more positive way of looking at a disagreement that allowed for a better outcome quicker.
Beautiful. Beautifully said. I mean, that's so true. We go into that. One is we call it stacking, right? Too. When you stack one argument amongst another, you start stacking evidence. She's out to get me. She doesn't understand me. She doesn't care. She does, whatever. She's cheating on me, right? She's just going to leave me for another guy. It's a common one. I think all of us have been through it one time or another, going through that. But guys, we talk about relationships, and you got to remember a couple of things. One is everybody claims that relationships are the most important thing to them. You'll hear me say this over and over again. Show me your priority. Show me your calendar. I'll show you your priorities. But, I don't know about you, Arthur, but when my wife and I, in any relationship, past girlfriends, etc., but most importantly, my wife, when we've had a really big disagreement that's caused that distance, that bleeds over to other areas of my life, to my work and to other things. I'm not concentrating, I'm not sleeping as much, and all of these things going out through the day, it causes me a disadvantage and only to operate at maybe 50%.
Yeah. Well, I mean, we often say this, that every area affects every other area. And if you at loggerheads with the person that's the most important person to you, your relationship, that you cannot be at peace, because you have this unresolved issue, and you're going to be taking that everywhere. Your mind's going to be all over the place. And so learning how to deal with that in a effective way, learning how to deal with it in an efficient way, speedily, is paramount, because you cannot afford, one, to be creating the stacking of events with your partner. Two, you can't afford to be walking away from that, and taking up space and time, because there's a much bigger reason here, guys. If we're in a relationship with someone we love, right? And I don't want to get morbid here, but you don't know, life is short, and I can't believe I just gone from one idea straight to the other one, which is like on the other side. But it's just like, life's too short to be messing around and playing games, and you really want to develop a deep, loving connection with the person in your life, your partner, because from that, so many beautiful things can come out of it.
So true. So true. Well, when you and Penelope would fight back before, I'll just call it relationship 1.0, because I know where you guys are now, in your skill sets and things. But when you guys would fight, right? And I'm asking you this because I think a lot of the guys are going through it. How often would you say you're thinking, okay, well, screw this, I'm out, right? As your way of dealing with that anger at the time.
So there've been a couple of times where I got so angry that I just ran out the house, not ran out the house, just stormed out the house, got in the car, drove off, didn't let anyone know where I was going. Once again, it was an extension of that. I'll show you, now I want to make you worry. It was really immature stuff. There were times where I had fights where I thought, okay, is that it? Am I going to, are we so apart, so on different tangents that, we have to go to separate ways. Luckily, I don't want to get too deep here. not too deep, Penny and I go back a long way, in a sense that, we are really, we say we were just perfect for each other. I was really fortunate to find her, fortunate that we connected on so many of the values. And I think that's really important for relationships, to share common values with your partner, because if your values are different, then that can beget a whole different list of difficulties. But we've been, we've had this solid foundation. So yes, there've been times where I thought, maybe this isn't right, maybe this isn't what I want, and yet, we always come back stronger as a result of the work that I realized we needed to do. And for the last 3-4 years, we've been doing quite actively. And I got to say, it's on both sides. because it's one thing us guys learning how to be better husbands, boyfriends, men, but it does take two to tango, and we do want to encourage and promote both sides doing work on themselves, because a lot of the issues that come up, going back to what Doug was saying earlier on, are issues from our past. And if we can clear that out, then it's not going to come out in our relationship with the person that we love.
Hey, sorry to interrupt the show, but I wanted to ask you a question. Do you ever feel like something's just missing? Like there's something more out there and you just can't put your finger on it? I totally get it. Go over right now to thepowerfulman.com/freedom to discover the system that other businessmen just like you are using. We've included 10 case studies, 10 men just like you who have found the solution and have found their way on their path. And we want to share that with you. Go over to thepowerfulman.com/freedom right away. Now let's get back to the show.
It's so true. Guys, this is just another reason to do that deep inner work and go, I always refer to it, and I don't know who I got this from, Arthur. It certainly wasn't my own. But most of the things I say are not my own, is, you got to clean up your side of the street first. All too often in relationships, we point the finger to the other person, right? Across the street, analogy of two houses. You're in your house, your relationship, and they're in theirs. And you look across the street and you say, wait a minute, there's weeds in that garden. Go pull those out. That's ridiculous. But if you step back and turn and look at your house, maybe there's garbage in the yard, there's a car parked on blocks, and the roof's falling in. It's just so often so much easier to point fingers, at the other person. So what's something that's worked really well for me, Arthur, is that idea of cleaning up my side of the street first. Mm-hmm. Before I get angry, upset, or even in the midst of an argument, and this is not how we do it now, but I still think this way, is, am I being the perfect version of myself? Am I being a great, not a good, a great husband? Am I being a powerful man or a powerful husband? Am I being all of these things, this checklist? Am I being the man that this woman married? Essentially, I asked her to marry me, right? I didn't tell her to marry me. I asked her to marry me and to trust in me. So, I ask those questions, and gosh, man, I don't know about you, but 10 times out of 10, the answer is no. The answer is no. And yet I'm still throwing rocks from my glass house over on her house.
Yeah, it's so common to find in others the problem that we ourselves are showing up with, and we see the examples out there. But, if we're not cleaning up our own house, as Doug says, we cannot expect the other person to show up with those characteristics that we're looking for if we are not showing up. And I guess that's one way to actually go out and about, becoming a better man is to figure out what bugs me about, what keeps coming up, and how can I develop that in myself first before I expect it from other people. Because otherwise we're just hypocrites, guys. If we're not showing up with certain things and we're expecting others to, then that's hypocritical, and we don't want to be that. And so it does take work on our side to shore up those things that we find in others that we so-called lacking, but that we need to clean out our own closets. And we're full of metaphors here today. But, cleaning the road, cleaning the closets, and everything. But we have to do our own work. We have to do our own work first. And if I can say, as I said earlier on, in the last 3 years, my relationship with Penny has got better. It's because I've done more work on myself than we've done together. We've done work together, but it's the work on myself that's counted for much, much more than anything else.
So true. Same thing with my wife and I. We've gone so far, Arthur, and I've shared this with you, I think, and definitely shared on this podcast, is nowadays, before we're in trouble, we go through courses and coaching together. We always have a coach in our corner, right? I always believe that everybody should have an advisor, a coach, somebody in your corner to help you out. And so my wife and I now, we're like, wow, marriage is perfect. It's amazing. Let's get a coach, because now we're going to be proactive rather than reactive. But I know that doesn't help the guy listening to this right now who would like to throw the telephone at his wife. Not that he will, guys, but got that sense of anger. So let's talk about how to dance around these arguments, Arthur. So flash forward to today. You and Penny have an upset, there's a conflict going on. How do you handle it now?
Well, first things first is I always look to try and understand exactly where she's coming from before I might be building up my case, getting my evidence lined up, and not really listening to what the problem is. Nowadays, it's just like I sit down, I shut up, and I listen to exactly what is she saying, what is the issue behind it, really to get a feel for where she's coming from. A lot of time, it's like things like she's not feeling understood or appreciated, right? She's not feeling loved, she's not feeling safe, for whatever reason that may be. And for some part, I've played a part in that. And so by sitting and listening to her, really getting a feeling for what is it that she's lacking or missing, and how is it showing up, then I can get a better bead on what's going on, instead of me just coming up with some sort of response. From there, my outcome is to how can I create peace? How can I create a solution here? Because the other thing, guys, is some of the time, what they are saying is the problem, sometimes isn't the problem. Yeah. And that's why you got to really get a feeling for behind it. It may come up as like, you never do this. And maybe it's because you're not, doing stuff that you should have been doing. And it comes out somehow else. So number one is getting it to a place where you fully understand where she's coming from. And not trying to, as I said earlier on, try to win the argument from the get-go.
Beautifully said. So a couple things that happened to me early on in my development of listening and relationships. So when I would get triggered, Arthur, and the person was talking, I would immediately jump in, right? Mm-hmm. You probably know this. I'm not a super passive person when it comes to the way I see things. You're laughing over there. So I jump in immediately and be like, no, that's not what happened, or no, that's not the case, and I would defend myself right away. So it was really difficult for me to get over that wanting to jump in, especially when there was a pause in the conversation, when you're in that listening mode and you're kind of tapping your foot, you're still smoke still coming out the ears, and then there's a pause in what that person says. I had a tendency to want to jump in right there and then state my case or state what I thought. Mm-hmm. And so something that worked really well for me, and I want to share this with the guys, is I started a policy of counting to 10 in my head. Not out loud, because that'll cause a whole other slew of problems. But go 1, 2. And I would just sit there and just look. And once I got to 10 often enough, right? So this took, guys, for me, this took a lot of work. Once I got to 10 often enough, I started inserting the question that we use in coaching a lot. What else? Right? And giving her the opportunity to share more, right? Especially if she's scared. If you've conditioned her, like I had, that I was going to come back with some logical, some very creative, very, arguments against what she had to say, and to prove my point, because I was going to win. I was like an attorney, stating my case in front of the grand jury. She may not have felt safe enough to go to what you said, Arthur, that true problem, what really is bothering her. And so again, I counted 10, gave the pause. What else? Calmly, right? Because at that point, I'm calm. By the way, I'm counting to 10. I'm breathing, diaphragmatic breaths. I'm bringing my state back, very centered. And then I'm asking, what else? And as soon as she says, well, nothing else, great. We got to the center. That's great. Now here's what I'm hearing from you, right? And so guys, this is where we get to play back what we heard. And this actually, transparently, guys, this happens even with our coaches. We've had, conversations where we've misheard each other, and it's caused a trigger or two between even the coaches. And we've done individually decades of work. Cumulatively, we've done like 50, 60 years of solid personal and business development. And yet it still happens between our coaches. So the key here is also communicating back what you heard. Okay, so let me get this straight. What I heard you say was ... Is that correct? Is that right? Now, you could still have the smoke coming out the ears, but if you're breathing correctly, chances are you're in a more calm state. And now you guys can get to the evidence of what Arthur was just saying, right? Now you're coming to an idea. Now you have everything that's really going on. And in my experience, Arthur, really at this stage, everything's good. She feels heard and validated, and a lot of things go away. And now you can have a conversation about what's going on. And, most of the time, it's something that's occurred for her or me that happened in her past, a trigger. Where did that first start from? You can go into that. I don't advise you guys do that until you've gone through the relationship training or the relationship course that we have at the Powerful Man, till you go through that advanced training. But this is a chance just for both of you to be heard, to feel validated of where you are and really get into that area.
Yeah, exactly, Doug. I think it's really important that you provide the platform for your partner to really vent. We call it venting, just to let off the steam, to let out the energy in words that is coming out without you trying to respond to that, but definitely allowing her the space to do that in, the safe space for her to do that in. And as Doug says, taking a pause to see if there's anything else there and asking if there's anything else. She will feel a lot better for it, and then you can actually get to the bottom of it. Which leads me to something else that you guys can do. Sometimes it's going to be easier to stay there and deal with this. Sometimes you may be so triggered that it's going to be really difficult to do this. So managing your state is going to be one of those most important things you can do when you are in a disagreement, which may mean that you have to leave the room, go outside, do 10 press-ups, or take 10 deep breaths, whatever it is, and then come back and deal with it. Okay. Obviously, don't walk out on her. Just you want to say, I just need 10 seconds. I'll be back. Go out, change your shape, your state, shift your state, come back, and then carry on from there. If you are, if you are so triggered, it's going to be really difficult to actually have a conversation at the level that you need to. And so you need to deal with that. You need to manage your state, whatever that means to you. Usually just taking some deep breaths, counting to 10, maybe as Doug said, maybe leaving the room and running around the block or whatever it is, and coming back and then having that conversation, is going to produce a better result. Once again, it all depends on what level the disagreement is, what level your state is. But having a really positive state is going to be a lot more productive than coming from a negative state. Let's call it that.
It works. I know this is hard, man, because you guys got to understand, Arthur and I are trying to condense probably, when we look at the course that we offer, 3 months worth of material into a 20-minute conversation. It's really tough. But guys, here's a couple other things that we'll leave you with, or I'll leave you with, and Arthur, I'll have you close us out here. But one is what Arthur said: if you need to walk away, walk away. But I'll add this caveat: turn to her and say, look, I'm not leaving the conversation, but I need to step aside. And that way she knows you're coming back to the conversation. Bonus points if you give her a time of when you can come back to the conversation. So an example could be, I'm not leaving the conversation, but I need to step out. We'll have this conversation at a deeper level, and we'll make sure we have it by Sunday. Right. Mm-hmm. So now there's an end date, right? You're not leaving an open loop there for, so to speak, using a more coaching term. Another thing that was really tough for me to learn, Arthur, because of my ego and wanting to be right, was the idea of apologizing when you know you're right. Right? Can't relate to this one at all, can you?
No.
So one of the ways, the way I was taught, and the way that, I've been taught a lot of ways, but the way that works for me with this is apologizing for the way you've allowed your partner to feel. So I'll go back to that in the car going hiking example, right? We were both upset, right? It sounds stupid, and it is stupid, guys. It is so stupid. That's why you look back at past arguments. You're like, what the fuck? What was I thinking? This caused this disconnect when I could have been having passionate sex or something else, right? So what I did is I apologized, said, look, I'm sorry. I did not mean to hurt your feelings. Right? Now, note, I never apologized for what I said, because I'm not sorry for what I said. I still stand by it. It's a stupid holiday, and there's so many of them, right? But I love her, and I was not trying to hurt her feelings. So I apologize for hurting your feelings. That was not my intent, right, in this conversation. Something as simple as that allows a bridge to have a better conversation, right? Because I care about her. I never want to really hurt her. So I use that as hey, look, I apologize for hurting your feelings. That wasn't my intention, right? And leave it at that. And then you can go on to explain. What I'm trying to say was, I've had someone talk to me about power showers and something else. I think, and I went on to say, gosh, women giving birth is such an amazing miracle. I can't do it, right? It's not something I can do. And the pain, gosh, I can't even imagine what that is like, so I'm not valuing that at all. So again, I'm not saying you're right, her in this case, or I'm right even. Right? I'm just apologizing from the emotional state because my intent was not to cause a disruption in our relationship. My intent was not to hurt her, right? And now she knows that. She knows she's safe. Now we can have a conversation at a deeper level.
Yeah, I love that. This one has been a really difficult one for me as well. Actually, just apologizing for being a jerk, because sometimes, we are jerks. And sometimes we did mean to lash out, and the quicker we can come back and apologize for that kind of behavior, the better, because that's uncalled for. There is no reason to be a jerk, to go out to say stuff that's just not fair. It's not nice. It's not kind. It's not loving. And I'm happy to say that doesn't happen at all now. It did happen before. And being able to just go up and apologize and say, I was out of line. I'm sorry. Huge. And the first time I did it, Penny nearly fell off her seat. So they really appreciate that. The other thing is, I just said it, appreciating her, showing true appreciation for her, actually saying thank you for when they do go out of the way to do something good for you. It's actually just saying thank you and making them understand that you see it. You see the efforts they're doing, that you appreciate them for all the efforts they are doing, but you have to say it. You have to say thank you. You have to point it out. They have to feel it. And when they feel it, when our partners feel appreciated, then things are going to go a lot better with us.
So true. So true. And I can relate in so many ways. And guys, we are having a relationship course that is coming out in 2020. It is designed for men. So in saying men, I don't say that lightly. We may require you to go through the activation method just to get you at that base point. We haven't decided as a team, transparently. And it was kind of funny, Arthur, as I was listening to you, I was thinking about this. While we're recording these podcasts, we can see each other on video, which is fun because I can see you shaking your head. I'm agreeing with you, et cetera, and we're laughing. The guys can't see it, but also our wives brought us in food separately, which I thought was really interesting. And they didn't know we're talking about this, by the way, men. They had no idea that we were talking. We didn't know we were talking about this until we started talking. But it is kind of ironic, yet very poignant to this conversation on how our relationships and our skills with our partner have evolved over the years, that even while we're sitting here doing a podcast recording without requesting, both of our partners brought us in food and snacks to take care of us. And I just think that kudos to you, man, my friend, for allowing that to be open in your relationship and setting the bar. So, gentlemen, that is it. If you find yourself in a relationship quandary or something that's going on, and if you don't, I recommend seriously rewinding, listening to this podcast again, and writing down the steps we broached, right? It is a formula. Right now, it takes skills to master the formula, and we just barely scratched the surface on this. But it is something that we teach, and you actually, if you haven't already, go over to thepowerfulman.com/freedom. We change that page all the time, by the way, guys. So if you went to it 2 weeks ago, it's going to be different today. And look at some of the case studies, because some of the guys talk about what we're talking about now, and they've turned their relationships around from brink of divorce, talking to lawyers, to actually thriving in their relationships. And that's what we want for you, should that serve you to the highest level. So guys, that's it for us. Arthur, thank you again for being with me on this beautiful day. Always good to see you, brother, and have an amazing day.
Thank you, Doug. Thanks, guys. All the best.